Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order the joint meeting of the City Council and the Charter Commission to order. Ms. Cassandra.
Mayor David Romero. Councilor Marvin Martinez.
Present.
Councilor Barbara Casey.
Here.
Councilor Michael Montoya. Councilor David Ulivari.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a quorum. Chairman Matt Martinez.
Present.
Commissioner Benito Pacheco.
Present.
Commissioner Meredith Brett.
Here.
Commissioner Joseph Cruz.
Present.
Commissioner Ashley Arianes.
Present.
Commissioner Joseph Dominguez.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a quorum.
Welcome, everybody. At this time, Ms. Ashley, will you lead us in the pledge?
Me? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilor Casey, will you lead us in a moment of silence?
Let us take a moment to thank our Creator for bringing us all together to work on a document that will help guide us through the next several years, and one that will be fair and equitable for everyone that is involved. Amen.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, approval of the agenda.
We have a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
A motion by Councilor Casey. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Martinez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We have to do a separate.
Yes. Chairman, approval of the agenda.
Their agenda?
I'll entertain a motion from our end to approve our agenda with the city council. There's a motion. Is there a second? Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't ever believe I've been to a dual meeting like this, mayor and a former mayor. I don't know if that counts.
Thank you.
Moving on to public input, we have no public input this afternoon, so moving on to our business items. The first business item is presentation by Charter Commission of work performed thus far and possible charter revisions.
So if I can, Chairman, again, welcome to this joint meeting, to all the commissioners. Thank you for the work. I know you guys have been at it twice a month. And I think there's been one time you guys met more than twice. But first of all, thank you for committing to serve and working on a document that will guide us and the governing body here in the future. I know a lot of discussion has taken place, and I think it's proper that now we, hear from what you guys have, kind of come up with. And, I know we have some suggestions that we might have. That way we don't get to a point to where you guys approve a document and we're, 180 degrees off of what you guys are looking at. So thank you, guys. And at that, Gino, I know you've been a part of this. Thank you for your guidance with the Charter Commission. Thank you. So I guess I'll turn it over to Matt, and this one's yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of the city council, and members of the commission, our attorney and our clerk. Thank you very much. I have to say that you all have done an incredible job putting this group together. It's a very diverse group, different age demographics, people from different parts of the community, and their discussions have been very exciting. Sometimes, when you get into this, you think, well, we've been there, done that. And then you hear a different perspective that you just didn't realize you needed to pay attention to. I think it's equally important to know that this commission voted in Ashley as our vice chair. So that brings a youth person and an old guy like me tied in the same committee trying to work on stuff. All of us, Meredith, Joseph, Ashley, and Benito, all of us have had some really good input. And sometimes we get into some discussions that sort of leads us into another piece of information that we want to get involved with. I think we're also very grateful to have someone as experienced as Gino on the team, because I think he brings a perspective that a lot of folks don't realize he has. He worked for the city of Santa Fe. I know he worked at the state government for Governor Richardson, and a whole host of other experiences that he's had. So I think that makes the work that we're doing that much easier. He can easily look up stuff if he's in the middle of something that sounds a little bit more off the path, and he's able to keep us in the right direction. So we're very grateful for Gino's experience that he's brought. The input that we've gotten from the clerk, she's somewhat quiet, but she makes sure that by looking at you that something's still up. So we'll give her an opportunity to get into the discussion. At some point, we're also going to make sure that we have a clear understanding of some of the items that have come up during her tenure here in that position. I also want to say that literally everyone here is working with an open mind. And we're hoping that some of the recommendations are something that you all would consider. Now, just so you all know, for sure, one of the things that I want to make sure that you all know, that we're just in the discussion phase of a lot of the charter. So we're looking at a couple of ideas that we think might be something you all might consider. Nothing we have is in concrete. And we're hoping that this dialogue will give us the opportunity to sort of see where you all are wanting us to come and consider moving forward. So with that, we're hoping to get information from what you all would like us to do or go back and continue to work. Our next meeting is the 26th. And we have scheduled longer meetings if we need to get through a lot of the document. And as soon as we're able to go through some of that stuff, we hope that we can be back at some point before the city council to present our final draft. And if for some reason we're still not there, we want to be activated immediately so we can meet within the required amount of time, review the changes that you all recommend, and then come back with something that you all will be comfortable submitting to the community. We would like to be considered as the group that wants to take on the heavy lifting. Let us take care of comparing, one city versus another, any scale, whether it's a way we put something together or even pay for mayor and council. All those things, we want to consider those. We're looking at a cross-section of all the other cities comparable size, and keeping in mind that, depending, just for example, on the salary piece, that we don't go so far down that only folks that are retired or people in that demo are the only ones that be able to be here. We want to make sure that we get a good cross-section of the community that has an opportunity to serve on the city council and as mayor in the future and as municipal judge. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I think what I want to do is turn it over to our attorney. He's put together a couple of working documents, and I don't know if we start off, Gino, is that proper for us to start off with some of the stuff we're working on and then get your feedback? Would that work, Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mayor, council, chair, commission, clerk, anybody else I need to recognize? We're all together here. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commission Chair, for the ability to present, to give a little bit of context and just a refresher. You've got a charter commission that's required to meet every few years, consider revisions to the charter, and make recommendation, ultimately vote on and make recommendations to the governing body for the governing body's review and approval. It's up to the governing body, ultimately up to the governing body, which charter amendments will go to this November election. And so I just want to place that context. The worker bees are the commission, as the chair talked about, and they will bring forward those recommendations. And you have that opportunity, hopefully through dialogue, to know, okay, we already like these, we'll put these on the ballot, but the final decision is the council's in this context. And I think I know that the commission has been very mindful and respectful of that. And that's the intent of this first joint meeting, is to say, hey, we've started some work. We have some recommendations. We have some options. Please give us feedback, because we don't want to be butting heads, and we don't want to be forwarding recommendations that are, for lack of a better word, offensive to the governing body. Okay, so with that as context, I'll go over the documents that you received for today's meeting. I'll start with the discussion draft of possible proposals. That's the thicker document that you have here. As a packet, these are the most examined and reviewed and worked portions that the commission has gone through. And as they make their recommendations or suggestions or put out options, then the clerk and I do two things. One, we do the research regarding similar communities. The clerk provides her research regarding the history of Las Vegas, and I do the legal research, and I do the drafting. So what you have before you, as the chair just explained, are things that are concepts that are being considered, but there hasn't been a vote yet to say this is an absolute recommendation. But we include them here for the council because this is what they're considering, and they'd like some guidance and some feedback. So with that context, I'll start with concept one. Concept one is maintaining, if the charter maintains 4 councilors and 1 mayor, the existing structure, there actually needs to be a revision to the charter agreement, or the charter document. There has to be an amendment because the old language was found not to be legally compliant when it included an at-large 5th counselor. So legally, with your type of city, you're required to have districted council positions, and you are not permitted to have the single at-large. You can increase your districts, your number of districts from 4 to 5 to beyond, but you're not allowed to have the at-large counselor. So if the charter stays as 4 counselors and the mayor, what's in this concept is just cleaning up the language in 2.01B to reflect the legally correct structure of 4 city councilors who shall be elected from single-member districts and shall collectively comprise the city council. So it's a legal fix. Same thing with 2.03. You're going to see references to the municipal election code. There have been significant changes since the last version of the charter. And so throughout the presentations today, you're going to see us trying to true up our requirements with the code. So instead of the charter defining its own qualifications and election of counselors, like I say, we reference the municipal election code. So counselors, the revised language in 2.03A is counselor candidates shall meet the qualifications required by section 1-22-3B as amended, because it might get amended through the years, of the New Mexico Local Election Act. And then that section deals with residency, time in your district, and then the ability to run within that district. That's all addressed in that section of statute. Okay. Any questions on that concept one? Okay. All right. Here goes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
So just for point of clarification, what I'm hearing is that we're just gonna be discussing all this, and then they're gonna go back to the table and do some more drawing and come back with a final revision of all the recommendations. at a later date. And then mayor and council at that time, when we have a council meeting, when we're ready for this, we will decide what goes on the resolution. And at that time, if mayor and council has any other recommendations, they can make them at that time, and we'll vote on them or agree on them at that time.
Mayor and Councilor, generally, that's the structure. Today's meeting is to just show you the progress and get feedback. So when I get into concept two, you're gonna see exactly what I mean when we talk about concept two. Because it's an either or with concept one and concept two. And so to hear the feedback of the governing body on these concepts, will provide good guidance. So there's an opportunity for feedback today is the main thing I want to point out.
And Counselor, if you check on item 2 on the business items, there is going to be an item there that, there are going to be some of these proposals here that, that the commission has already worked on, that, to me, they're just legal clear-ups that need to be changed. I think those are something that we could, give the okay here today. So there might be things that we all agree on here today so that way the Charter Commission is clear that, okay, well, those items we don't have to mess with at all as we move forward, and we can continue moving forward instead of them having in the back of their mind saying, well, were they okay with, let's say, these first possible proposals? It's just clearing of legal language. So, if there's items that we could all agree on here today, then at that point, the Charter Commission, we let them give him the okay on those items. Am I clear? And that's the way we.
Mayor and Councilor, that's also a good description.
Yeah.
I think it is good to look at the 3 items under business items. So number 1 is the presentation from the commission. Number 2 is discussion recommendations. So the feedback, but also, hey, we might like something else, why don't you look at this? But, again, you're 5 governing body members, so to chase sort of 5 different agendas can be very difficult on a commission that's got a limited amount of time to work. So that's why agenda item 3 is there. If the governing body raises something today that says, hey, we really want to see this, you have an action item in 3 to vote and say, yes, commission, work on this initiative. So the governing body can actually take action to give direction and say, work on this initiative, that initiative, rather than chasing down 5 different agendas in 5 different directions, if that makes sense. Okay.
Chairman?
If I may, I would hope that by the time we bring back the final document, that it encompasses all of the recommendations that you all would like us to consider. You still have the opportunity to add newer, or at the last minute, new proposals, because that's the prerogative of the mayor and council in regards to this. But we would like the opportunity to at least go back to our committee and hash out some of those ideas and possibly bring back something that might work, and maybe, hopefully, we didn't miss out on anything. But the prerogative is still yours, but we'd like for you all to give us recommendations, even if it's past today's meeting. Just write us something, give it to the clerk, and we can, we can work on it. I know we have to possibly meet one more time with the manager. We weren't able to meet with him when he was scheduled. So we hopefully have the opportunity to go through and really review those changes that you all might like. I think what happened in the last commission, which I was also involved with, I don't know the total number of recommendations that we made, but I think when it was all said and done, there was more that were placed on the ballot, and I don't know if they were done all together, I can't remember, or one item at a time. But I know at the last election, the 3 or 4 that were on, all of them lost, as far as I can recall. Can't depend on that anymore, but we want to make sure that as many things that you want us to consider, let us hash them out, review them, make sure we get them checked with other communities and with legal and with the municipal code, and then we can bring them back to you. But the prerogative is still yours, but I would hope that you give us the opportunity to go through those recommendations, if you have some today, or if you have some between now and the time we present at the end, if that makes any sense.
Now, concept two. Concept two is the concept of moving from 8 counselors, from 4 counselors to 8 counselors.
Before, Mr. Mayor, so before we move on from 1, so on section 203, qualifications of election of counselors, everything that's scratched off, you're throwing out?
Sorry?
Everything that's scratched off, that you're throwing out?
The line through is
Yes.
deletions, that is correct, because those have been superseded by the New Mexico Local Election Act. So now we refer to the Local Election Act, which defines the qualifications for single-member districted counselors.
Then now, anyone that walks into Las Vegas can run for office the day before filing date?
Now, let me read, do you want me to read to you the?
No, I'm just saying
the
because because it's scratched off that you don't have to be a resident 90 days before.
Mayor, Counselor?
Yes.
It does not eliminate that. Those requirements are now in statute. So if you want me to read it to you, I'll.
It's
I'll
in the
read it to you.
statute.
It's in the statute.
But you're deleting what we had on the charter. and
Because it
referring to
didn't
the-
comply with
Okay.
statute, correct?
All right. Thank you for
So, so,
clarification.
so if you go to the statute lays out what the
Yeah.
regulation is.
Instead of us putting
Yeah.
it, laying it out on the charter itself.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, Gino, can you just quickly go through how other communities are able to sort of get through their daily life without even having a charter? Just give us an example of how that would work.
Well, non-charter entities are required to follow the municipal code. And that defines your structure, whether that's mayor-manager, mayor-administrator, mayor-clerk, your governing body structures. When you go to charter, you get to define more of your roles. But we still always have to comply with statute. What's new to the game for everybody, for municipalities and for school districts, is this local election code. That didn't exist the last time you went through charter, and that's, if you recall, that's what moved our elections to November. And moved our election structures and took municipal elections to the county. So there are new structures, and there's a whole new statute around that, and that's why I make references to that statute. Whether we're charter or not, all our municipalities have to comply with the election code. But as a charter, you do get to set more of your own rules, and you'll see some of that here. You get choices, like, I'll get back to it, concept 2, the ability to either be a 4-member governing body, or 4-member council, or an 8-member council. And so that would be dual-member districted council, and that's what I'll introduce here. We're ready to move to that point, Mayor. Okay, so concept 2, page 2 of 8 of your packet. So the concept is to make city council compliant with statute, not less than 4 members, not more than 10, and increasing the number of councilors to 8, and revising the qualifications just like we did in the other version to match statute. So the biggest change you're going to see is in B, the corporate authority of the city shall be vested in the governing body, which shall consist of 8 city councilors, who shall be elected from 4 dual-member districts, numbered 1 through 4. So you'd still have wards 1 through 4, but each ward would have 2 representatives. And I can defer to the chair for the public policy on that, or I can describe it myself, whichever you prefer. Which is this, the part of that concept is for each of the wards to just have additional representation. Other municipalities do it, and so if you can't, if maybe you've got one counselor that lives closer to you or understands your particular needs in the ward right now, it's very taxing on one counselor to deal with the entire ward. If you can split up the constituencies or the interests and all of that in tag team, the theory is that you will better represent your ward because they're gonna have access to two members there. So that's the public policy. Anything further, Chair? Did I cover that okay?
No, and Mayor and Council and Commissioners, just want to point out that one of the reasons that we went back to this is how the city ran up to a certain point in the last few years. And I have an opportunity to visit with the commission about how it worked before. It's pretty obvious in the last few years what we've seen since the 8 councilors. There's been a lot of split votes. I can at least think of the last 3, maybe 4 administrations where the mayor's literally voting more than half the time, and in some cases, the entire council meeting. That wasn't the case before with 8, but that decision's still up to you all to consider. But I know that it worked a lot easier. In my case, I hate to point these out, but I served for 2 years, had numerous council meetings, voted only once. And I think the council set me up because they made me vote to go into executive session. So it wasn't a split vote. One of the things that I think that I saw between having 4 city councilors and 8 is it gave an opportunity for the council to, work through some of these issues. It's a lot easier to convince, it's not as easy to convince 2 people as it is to convince 4 or 5, with your recommendation. So it means that there's a lot of dialogue between the councilors, between the wards. And you see how they definitely actually reach consensus. In some cases, I saw that on their own. So that's one of the reasons that we're somewhat recommending that we go back. You all have had meetings where you've had only the mayor and 2 councilors. You still have a quorum. And if one councilor votes one direction and one the other, the mayor breaks the tie. If 2 councilors vote in the affirmative or the negative, literally 2 city councilors are running the town. If you have one city councilor absent, that pretty much eliminates the mayor from ever having to vote. There'll never be a tie. So those are the kind of considerations that we took. And actually, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, if any of the other members of the commission would like to speak to this and some of the discussion that we've had, you all are welcome. Go ahead, Meredith, if you don't mind. Is that all right, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, that's fine. And then, I know, and there's a microphone there. I'm not.
Got it. Thank you, everyone. And just another thought that we had was that supposing several of you or several counselors wanted to attend an important function in the community, you wouldn't have to worry about having an unannounced quorum or an unofficial quorum. With 8 people, you have the opportunity to have 4 of you show up, and it's still legal.
That is correct. Anybody else? Members?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I think just to expand on what Meredith was saying, we've seen quite a bit of emergency situations in the city of Las Vegas again over the past 4 or 5 years. In those emergency situations, if we had 3 city councilors show up, or 2 city councilors and the mayor, then we'd have a quorum. And it's really, I think, sometimes in our best interest to have a good amount of our elected officials available for public emergencies. And our current setup constrains our ability to really do that effectively right now. I think that's one of my major concerns.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. One of the big things, one of the big factors to me is also the representation per ward. I think that I'm sure each counselor can attest to the fact that they have a lot of constituents that are always constantly reaching out to them for help navigating through issues. I know that I am probably one of the ones that blows up the mayor's phone pretty regularly. But I think that something to think about is if you share, constituents with another counselor in your ward, I think the responsibility and the communication is there with your constituents. I think that it makes an easier pathway and a lot more transparency when it comes between counselors and constituents. And I think in terms of crisis, whether it's flooding or whether it's fires or whatever it may be, emergency situations, I think, in my opinion, it sounds like it would be a lot easier and more manageable if there were two counselors to be able to really navigate their ward and kind of help people kind of navigate what's going to happen. For example, I know with the water situation lately, Miss Casey was taking on a lot of emails and trying to get people kind of lined up to get water and getting water delivered. If you had dual counselors, that might be something that could easily be addressed. And it's kind of more of, in my opinion, it's more of a community thing too, to have the help of another counselor as well. So.
Also, Mayor and Council, there's a lot of boards and committees and subcommittees within the governing body, and, I think it'd be good have more members so they could represent as advisors on these different boards and meetings too, and also, it benefits the community. For example, if someone has to go out of town and network to try and get more monies for the town, and there's a bunch of crisis stuff going on here, leave some of those back. Also, I believe it benefits more and represents the community better for different boards. There's a lot of boards going on and not enough council members to sit at those boards, or you guys are going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting all day long for all week long. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Martinez?
Yeah, what I'd like to add is, I'm a counselor for Ward 4, but I've been called by constituents in other wards to try to fix problems in their wards, maybe because they don't get along with the current counselor, and that's okay. If there was 2 counselors per, it'd be easier. Per ward, it'd be a lot easier for that individual to have somebody else they can talk to and not really cross district lines in a way, to get something taken care of. So for me, I've been seeing that more locally, lately, I should say, in the last couple of weeks. So, and I want to be able to help, but I don't want to step on anybody's toes either when it comes to their ward. So I want to, that's something I've been dealing with.
Gino?
Chair. So as the lawyer, thinking about some legal issues, having read the charter, having dealt with several ordinances, and my advice to the city, you run into, with the current composition of 4 counselors, you run into problems in the following areas. If there's a vacancy on the council, it starts to create issues, because now the quorum numbers go down, number 1. Number 2, your votes get messy, because it might be a 2-1 vote, but the vote requires a majority of the council, a vote of the majority of the council, meaning you need 3 votes in favor, but it's 2-1, and it's not a tie, and the mayor doesn't get to vote. So you have problems when there's a vacancy. You have Open Meetings Act issues of a quorum. When you're down to, when you're down to 4, it's still, a quorum would still be 3. But if you move up to 8, 4 of you can work together in between meetings to move things forward without violating the Open Meetings Act. A very good point was made that there could be more council committees and spread that work through. I think I've covered, but it's the Open Meetings Act compliance and the vacancy issues, and getting your majority votes, that this could ease those issues that you're running into frequently. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make sure we got through why we went that direction, because we knew that it worked once before. in our community. And I think the only reason that it changed, it was an issue of salary. And the community, before it became a home rule community, decided that we were not going to pay those city councilors the amount of money they were considering at the time, and decided on their own they're going to take care of that, and they did. And that's how we landed up going from 8 to 4. But this is a different time, and I think what's happened, in my estimation, and only mine, is that the community has lost representation. We need more representation instead of less. So I think this gives the opportunity to go back to that. And hopefully we can make it easier for you all to operate as a city council.
Mr. Casey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I agree in concept with Councilor Martinez, but the truth of the matter is that people don't even know what ward they live in, and they just call the person that they feel comfortable with. So if somebody feels comfortable with Councilor Martinez because they do business with him and he's awfully good to the people and stuff, or they know Councilor Montoya from his work with the highway department, or they know Councilor Olivari because he's picked up their car that's dead someplace, 50 miles away from here or whatever. And so we all get calls from everybody pretty much, and I never ask, what ward do you live in? I don't ask for their address. I don't ask for anything like that. So, but it is an awful lot of work for people. The thing that I'm concerned about is money again. These chambers would have to be reworked, a lot of remodeling. Salaries would have to be increased, and travel expenses for going out of town to municipal league meetings, to the state capitol during legislative sessions, all of those things. Were all of those things discussed or considered in your deliberations?
Yes, they were, Councilor, and
They'll come up in following concepts.
yeah. That was actually the driving force behind reviewing them all. And hopefully we get to a happy medium. I know we had 8 before, and we were able to, and I think the compensation, the salaries, but probably the same as it was back then.
Right.
So we actually visited with the finance director as well. So Morris came in and gave us a report if the capacity was there, and he said pretty much it is, but it's always, best to side on the more prudent way of managing money. But he said more people working on behalf of the community means you got to compensate them some way. I think the current calculation came out to like $1 something per hour if it was a 40-hour week. I don't know how many hours city councilors put in. As mayor, I know there's a lot of hours, and as councilors, you may be working, you may be, out of town, but they still can get a hold of you. This thing changed everything. So it doesn't matter if you're on vacation or you're, out of town for groceries or something else. It doesn't matter. People get a hold of you at any point. So we reviewed that very carefully.
I appreciate that because I haven't done this lately, but in prior years as a counselor, I kept track of the hours that I put in and divided it by the $10,000 salary, and I was making 32 cents an hour. So it's like, okay. So it really is kind of a volunteer job to begin with, and it still will be, even with an increase in pay. And I'm not complaining because I love what I do. And I'm very thankful and grateful that people, come to me when they have a need or a question or whatever. But I just wanted to make sure that all of those items had been considered also. Thank you.
Go ahead, Gino.
Mayor and Council Commission, the other sections of concept 2 just deal with the process for implementing 8 members. There would be 2 counselors per ward, as we talked about, and the terms would be staggered. for each ward. So in a given election, only one of the two members would be up for election. You don't have both members in a ward up for election at the same time. And so we wrote in the process, because this wouldn't happen until 2027. If a charter amendment is approved, is on the ballot, and it's approved for 8 members, then the 8 members would become effective for the November 2027 election, and then be seated on January 1st of 2028. So it's not an immediate, it sets it up so that in the next regular election, everybody comes on board, and then it's structured, it's a lot of complex language on page 3 of 8 that just says, we stagger by ward. And in 2027, some positions will be up for 4-year terms, some will be up for an initial 2-year term, and then 4 years thereafter to maintain the staggering.
So Gina, just to be clear, because I know we're like in a very, very unique situation based off of resignations from council, resignations from mayor. We have 4 seats up this election. So that has been taken into consideration on this?
It has, because the way your election is structured in 2025, it's getting everybody back on track with the term ranges they're supposed to be on. And then when we get to 2027, then we stagger after everybody's back on track. So yes, Mayor, after 2 elections, everybody will be completely on track with 8 council members. If it stayed at 4, you'd all be on track now in 2025, and there'd be no changes in 2027.
Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you very much for the explanation of that option or concept. I served in a council of 8, and I'm serving in a council of 5, the mayor. Mayor Sanchez in that time, I think, voted twice for a tiebreaker with 8. Our current mayor probably voted 6 times in the last 3 years, maybe.
That was like 3 times in one meeting.
Total, probably 6 times, I would say. The pros and cons are here and there. There is positive and there is negative. But, in 2006, 2004, we passed a referendum for a grocery tax of 1/4% for the recreation center. And just bear with me. We had a program set up and we pushed it and everybody was for it. And that's how we were able to build the second phase of the recreation center. This 8, I was in the council when they changed it to 4 right after. And it was because of too much councils and not enough members being on committees. I recommended to this committee already before that, in order to keep mayor and council accountable, that at every organizational meeting, that every councilman or woman should serve on at least 3 committees. And if it's 2 members per committee. But what I'm saying is the push to this or any other thing that's going to be on this referendum is going to be education. And I'm going to say this because the last time it went, what is it, Madam Clerk, correct me if it was something like 2,100 votes to 120 to go back from 8 to 4, something like that. It was a big, large difference. And I understand the community was upset with that council. But the point is, if we don't educate the public, and I don't know how many public meetings you guys all have yet, or if you have any, but I recommended you'd have some input from the community as to these changes, because otherwise, no matter what we put on the agenda, people are going to vote it down, because people don't want a larger government. The salary is the same thing. We were at 20,000. When we went in, it was 10,000. We landed up at 20. They voted it back to 10,000, 15,000 and then back to 10,000. So, what I'm saying is this government belongs to the community, to the people of Las Vegas. And we can make all the rules or regulations or proposals that we want, but if we don't educate them as to the background as why we're doing this, I mean, it's a losing situation. So I'm just asking that going forward that once all this is done, that we go on the radio, you guys go on the radio, everybody pushes for this referendum, because otherwise it ain't gonna stand a chance. One item out of 7 passed the last time. And salaries was one of them that didn't pass, and 8-4 was another one, and I don't remember what else was on there, but I think education is a big part of being able to pass through all this. Just my observation and my comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And to add to that, Counselor, I think also, and this is why we're having this discussion now, I think, the intention of having this charter commission and letting them take the lead on some of these changes, I totally agree with you. I think if there's a belief or knowledge in the community that these changes are coming from the governing body, well, we know that the trust within the government isn't there, but I think we have members in this commission that are well recognized throughout the community, well trusted, and I think if, we listen to them, 'cause I know in the past charter commissions have been put together and maybe 20 proposals, out of the 20 that were proposed, 2 or 3 were taken, and I think that's why it was shot. So I think it's important that we really work closely with these individuals and getting, at the end, we represent the whole community, but we also appointed these individuals from our constituency to lead the direction and the discussion of this document versus just it coming from us and then saying, well, there you have the elected officials telling us what we should be, how they should manage the city government versus the people being the ones telling us how they want to run city government. So I think you're right, and that is being on the same page and then going from there. Chairman?
Mr. Mayor, and I do want to concur with Councilman Montoya. It is an educational process. And, that's why we're hoping we do the heavy lifting, come back with some recommendations. And when the final document is put together, I think we all would like to get involved with recommending it to the community from our perspectives without any, direct pressure from the city council and the governing body, that these are the recommendations we're recommending to the community. It's going to be education. It's going to have to be. And hopefully we have an opportunity to visit with the community. Now, I think through the process, at some point, when you finally approve it, I think there'll also be some opportunity, or maybe before that, to have a public meeting so that if people have, concerns with what maybe you all are considering or have already considered, I know you guys all have the opportunity to go back and reconsider stuff by putting it back on the agenda. We'd like to invite the public to come to those kind of meetings. Like we said earlier, none of this is in concrete. This is a working document, just like the entire document is a working document. But the proper vehicle to get this done is through the commission. And we're grateful that you all have done that, appointed us to do this kind of work, and that's the plan that we have. And we plan to educate the community the best that we can.
Mayor, Council, Commission, that takes us to concept 3. I'm going to take a minute to introduce this before getting to the options. Compensation. The background work that was done on compensation was looking to other similarly situated communities in population, some of them, some similarly situated charter municipalities. And so that's what developed this option, this set of 4 options. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that there is one community that essentially moved compensation out of the charter and into their ordinances. Governing body's still responsible for adopting it and still accountable to the community, but it doesn't subject every increase, whether that's for, cost of living or anything like that. It doesn't subject it to an election process. However, the governing body is still accountable each time they pass an ordinance. And ordinances have greater scrutiny because they have to be published in the paper. They have to have a public hearing, all of those things. Probably an option I should have included here, but what we've really talked about are these main four options, which is moving from 10,000 across the board to 15,000 across the board for each counselor and for the mayor. That's option one, from 10 to 15. Oh, by the way, as we did this research, I smile as I say it, there was one community whose compensation was zero. And I believe that was Silver City. Their city council received zero in compensation. Everyone else had compensation. And so from 10 to 15 is option one. Option two is mayor at 25 and councilors at 15. The point here is differentiation, because a mayor may be spending more time and certainly has more executive duties. And so it's a differentiation, mayor receiving more. I don't want to characterize anything other than that, just this option is a mayor getting an increment more than a councilor. That's option two. Option three, and this is utilized actually by the city of Santa Fe for their compensation of their counselors. They actually peg it to the county commission's pay, number one, and then because they're comparable roles. And then number two, it's the legislature that adjusts that every year. So after they peg it to that pay, it's out of the municipality's hands, and those increases that are provided by the legislature then find their way to the governing body. Okay? So that's option three, and that's, because that one's a little bit more detailed, I'm gonna read the language of it, but it says, annual compensation. Oh, I deleted too much language. So it should read, annual compensation for the mayor and each counselor shall be in an amount equal to the maximum amount authorized by the legislature to be paid county commissioners in Class B high valuation counties. San Miguel is a Class B high valuation county, as provided for in section 4-44.4.1A, and as may be amended thereafter from time to time. Boy, I have a couple of typos in there. And so, I'll have to go back to my notes. I don't remember what that amount is, but I'll look up the statute right now and it'll tell me. So that's the way it's done. You peg it directly to it, and in option three, it's making it the same amount. As you discuss that, I will look up what that amount is. Any questions on that option as that
Mr. Mayor.
is structured?
So, Mr. Zamora, that's what we used 18 years ago, and that's how it went up to $20,000. So why would we'd have to ask the voters for that permission or the okay when it's already on the books?
Mayor, councilor, it's no longer on the books. It was removed by a previous version of your charter. What the language that's in your charter looks like is option one.
Okay.
That's exactly the language, just changing the 10,000 to 15. So that process had been removed in the past.
Okay.
Now it's coming back to this. While I'm looking up the number, option four is a percentage of that amount. So rather than the full amount, some type of percentage determined ultimately by the governing body prior to putting it on the ballot. And I put those numbers here of what 90%, 80%, all the way on down to 50% would look like. Yet I didn't include the total number. Oh, there it is. It's currently 30,196. I showed that in option 4. So 100% of a Class B county high valuation commissioner is 30,000 per year. And then as you look under option 4, you see what 90% looks like, and 50% would look like 15,098 as annual compensation for a mayor and council. Again, I deleted too much language, but it should be annual compensation for the mayor and councilors shall be that amount.
And if I may add, Mr. Mayor, we looked at this very carefully because there's a number of cities that use this formula because they never have to go back and address it ever again. It pretty much depends on what the legislature puts as the caps. And then the Class A, B, and C counties, I think they are, they're the ones that you fall under certain counties, and ours is B. We would have that calculation. Now, if you all wanted to do a 90% or a 50%, under current conditions, I think the 30,000 is the pay for the commissioner. I thought it was higher, actually.
I'm double checking it
I
right now.
think it was 36, 7, 8.
Went up.
Yeah. I believe it just went up. 2018, I was looking that up.
Yeah.
2018 was this current one, but I think it's like 36.
But there's a number of communities, cities that don't mess with salary. It's all tied into this. So this gives you from A to Z almost all the different options that you have, including the one that it can go back to ordinance. And from what I can remember on just the ordinances, you can't increase your pay while you're in that position at that time. I don't think that comes in until the next election, right? You can never increase your own pay during the time you're there.
Right. So what would happen is with the November 25th election, actually because it goes out to a vote, it's not yourselves increasing it for yourself, but it's the election. It wouldn't be effective until after the November 2025 election if this is on there. So it would take place in the new term on January 1.
So it will be January 1st of 26?
Of 26.
Yeah.
Any changes to compensation?
Okay, so it won't be the year 2027?
Correct.
Okay, so does that mean that anybody here that's running for that office has to do a disclaimer before voting for that? Because you're voting for your own salary to be raised?
Well, you don't have to opt out. Your role is to update the charter. So you don't exempt yourself out, but it is implied, I mean, the public is fully aware that when the governing body is putting together compensation changes, that you're a member of the governing body and you are putting forward a compensation change.
It might be a little bit funny, but, people out there take that serious.
Sure.
And one question, Mr. Mayor, I also had, on your research and on your surveys, how many cities or how many mayors are in different compensation than their council?
You have to go back and refer. It was, I'd
would
say
be the
about
only
half
ones?
and half.
Oh,
I'd
half
say
and half?
about a half and half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious,
And Councilor, Mr. Mayor,
Chairman?
it almost felt like the bigger the community is, the more distinct there was a chance for the mayor to make more than the smaller communities where almost everybody was the same. But the bigger the cities were, it looked like, I don't even know what the mayor of Albuquerque, or I know they just had an increase in Santa Fe, right?
Yes.
And that was actually shocking to the commission.
Well, Santa Fe has a full-time mayor and therefore compensates at the rate of a full-time mayor. They just did a salary commission review, and I want to say that number came out at about 120 for the mayor role. But it's not the part-time mayor that most all of our municipalities have. I'm trying to think who all has a move. I know Albuquerque does and Santa Fe does, maybe Las Cruces does. But full-time mayors are very unusual.
And Gino, do you know what the compensation was for city councilors in Santa Fe?
It was the equivalent of Class A county commissioners. So it's approximately 39. I am on Westlaw right now with the most up-to-date statute. And Class B high valuation counties, county commissioners, $30,196. So 30196 is the current compensation for your county commissioners here. They may have something on top of that, but there's changing that numbers, but that's what's set by the legislature.
What was Santa Fe for council? Class A?
Let me get back there. It's a Class A. And so I'm getting there. Class A county salaries, right here, as it loads up, is 39,106.
So that's the compensation for the city councilors in Santa Fe.
Yeah. Which, by the way, if it isn't already for you now, is, it's PERA compensation too. Oh, thank you.
Yes, so Mayor and Council, if I may. So we were going back to our research, and there was a majority of the villages and towns that the mayor did get paid more. Some of it was doubled, some of it was smaller amounts, some was just up by $500 or $1,000, but I think we had like 12 communities that we researched, and there was 9, 10 that the mayor got paid more.
Comparable, right?
Yes. Of comparables.
We've done quite a bit of study on this because we want to make sure we get it right, because it's been an issue in our community. And I think they need to know that we did the research. They need to know.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Martinez.
So just for clarification, on option 3, going with a legislative direction, I guess I should say it like that. I guess it's fair to say that the general public need to know that that money does not come from state. It's generated here in our own community. Because I don't want people to think, well, if they go with option 3, the state's going to provide them salary. Well, that's not entirely true at all, correct?
Correct.
So I just wanted to be clear that I'm reading it right and that the general public understand it as well.
Mr. Mayor and Matt and everybody, I'm
Ms. Britt.
thinking, about the Friday water report and the optic and how we could have something like that from time to time with some of these more possibly controversial items. We could explain them from the point of view of any one or all of us on the commission.
And if I can, thank you, Meredith, for bringing that up. So that's something that we've been in discussion with the PIO and city manager is after this meeting, put out, I know our PIO has been putting a couple stories out in the optic and news bulletins and putting something out that the commission is meeting. I mean, I know we talk about public input. All those meetings are advertised, and you guys probably don't get anybody from the community, but advertising properly and then maybe reaching out to the community and say, hey, you have 2 meetings left, come give your input. So there is going to be an effort now here towards the end to bring the community in for that.
That'd be great. We're ready for it. I know in the last 2 commissions, we had some public input. But we also have a smaller town now too, in some cases, than we had back in the first go-around that I can recall better in the last. But we did have some input before in the last committee as well. But the more, the public's welcome to come and give us, their recommendations and hopefully we can consider them and go through them. This one, as you can tell, we've done some pretty good research on this because we know that this is going to be a stickler. And we may also come back with a recommendation that, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too early, but this may be the best time in consideration of the discussion. We may end up coming back with a lot of changes to the charter that you all may approve, just say hypothetically, with one question for all those changes and a second one just for the compensation and salary. Because we wouldn't want all the work that's done to be dismissed, the baby thrown out with the bathwater, just because we got the salary wrong. But nonetheless, I think it's important that we bring the charter up to date with everything else that's not tied to salary. So we understand the sensitivity of that. That's why I think we've spent so much time on this. But I think at the end of the day, we have a pretty good chance that we may land up proposing 2 questions for you all to consider. And it's still, again, up to you all if you want to add more than that.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Chair. You know, this is what I'm talking about, is you can advertise all you want on black and white. You can go on the radio all you want on the air, but they're not gonna come to you. And all I'm saying is that you have to go to the community. We have to go to the community and have meetings in different areas in the community. They will not come to you. They will not come to you. I mean, you see today, this meeting was advertised, and yeah, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but some people are working, but still, we have one resident here, 2 residents here today. So really, if this thing's gonna pass, it's gonna have to be promoted and whatever means to get to people to understand what you're trying to do. Because when they get to the poll in this November, there'll be more people and there'll be more things on the agenda for the voting, because we're abstaining to the November. So they'll get lost. This thing will get lost. And they'll just say, no, 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 because they don't know what it's about. So I'm just saying we gotta go to the people, whatever means it is, whatever we gotta do, because they're not gonna come to us. They're not. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'd like to divert to the clerk. So hypothetically, we're looking for a final vote from the council about when?
You will give your final recommendations by the end of April. And then we're looking at, I believe it's the first part of July. So it gives the council May and June to give the final document. And we get it out to the public during that time.
So their vote would be in July? June?
No, it'd be in June.
Okay. So between June and November, that's when we have the opportunity to go out to the community as well, to inform them. And maybe, I think back in the first go-around that I was involved with, we did it in each of the wards. So we had a location in each of the wards where we asked the community to come. That piece of work that was done by that commission back then is when we became a home rule community, and literally everything on one document passed. So we got referendum, initiative, recall, and home rule, all of those accomplished in the very first one. And that's exactly the process that we took. So there's time still, but I think, Councilor Montoya, you're hitting the nail on the head. No matter what we do here, in consideration of the fact that we don't get a lot of people to come to our meetings, we need to go out to the community. And hopefully we can also maybe get information out, maybe through utility bills that we're gonna be in the different wards. Let, the commission go on the air at the 2 radio stations in town, maybe possibly have an interview with the local paper and try to get as much information out to the community. Because this is our community voting on its path. And it's important that people take this information seriously and under consideration. Because I'll tell you what, it's been interesting. I know all these commissioners, are looking at all these things and say, oh my God, I didn't even know about all these things and how this little piece makes such a big difference. Literally, we could do all this work, and if we don't, prepare this for the community in the proper way, if we add something like maybe the salary that could probably derail the entire document, let's get the document done. Then we'll figure a way to work on that in the future. Or future, governing bodies will have that issue to address. But at this point, let us get us caught up legally on how this document should look like.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I think, kind of going off of what Councilor Montoya is saying, I think we also need to be a lot more strategic, because I think at least our age demographic, we don't always pick up a paper and sorry, Chair Martinez, but not a lot of people listen to the radio sometimes, especially
I
my
like the music.
they have AirPods and Apple Pods and all these, different things. But I think one of the interesting ways that it should be considered is how do you kind of reach the age of voters that aren't in that generation anymore. And I think that's kind of what I prize myself on in being, strategic when it comes to how do you direct this towards a demographic that doesn't understand. I didn't understand half the things that we were talking about, and now that I do, I realize what should be done and what's appropriate. And then you start realizing how uninformed our community is and uninformed my age group is, So I think, being strategic in the target and who we're trying to go for, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a thing that we do political or polls, or we even do like advertising for the next couple of months on social media where we do a couple of email blasts or a couple of, a couple of like blasts that kind of go out into the community and target people our age and kind of put it into like words that they understand. Sometimes I look at this stuff and I don't understand it until our attorney explains it. But once you start kind of getting into that and you start understanding how it works, I think it'll make a lot more sense to people in our age group and start, getting a little bit more engagement from younger groups, if that makes sense. I just think it should be very strategic and, how we're gonna approach more people to be a lot more engaged with what we're doing.
On that point, Mayor, Council, Commission, I have been involved in previous years, whether with municipalities and school districts, actually, that will organize what's called a community campaign. And it looks very much like a candidate campaign, fundraising, mailings, all of that. But it's an issue-based campaign with the campaign manager that conducts a lot of what's been talked about here. And that can be something for members of the governing body to consider whether they'd want to sponsor something like that would get the educational materials into mailboxes and into people's households and doors knocked and all of those things. So before we leave this concept, on your printed page, option 3, just write the following number, 30196. Option 3's proposal is that number, compensation across the board. Mayor and councilors. Even though my language is messed up, I will fix my language in the next draft. Same thing with option 4, my language is messed up, but in option 4, you're talking about a percentage of that amount. And when you say that percentage, you're gonna get the legislative increases, but it's not the full amount. If you think that 30,196 is too much, then we included those numbers down below. So for example, you could say you prefer the 50% of what a commissioner's making. I don't know that you're working 50% as hard as a commissioner, but 50% is the compensation, and then that would put everybody at 15,098. And then that would just move on its own as the legislature moves on. Okay. All right. If there are no more questions, that'll take us to concept 4. For the most part, concept 4 is just procedural changes to comply with the new election calendar and to eliminate some conflicts with the Open Meetings Act and to update our practices because remote attendance is a reality. Periodic remote attendance is a reality. And so if you start in 2.07A, it talks about the governing body at the first, let's ignore the new language, at the first meeting following a municipal election. Well, under our old system, you were elected in the first Tuesday of March, and you took your seat a week later. And so you did all your organization. The language worked there. But now, you're in November, the election's the first Tuesday in November, you don't take a seat until January. So that language doesn't work anymore. So that's that correction there, is to say the first regular meeting on or after the first day of January. The highlights, this is highlighted language that's in your charter. It just seems a little oddly detailed about, in that first meeting, you've got to review the mission and vision statement, reviewing the top 10 priorities of the previously elected governing body, if you guys are even creating that list on an annual basis, and confirming the appointment of the city manager and appointed officers. Again, that seems a little detailed, and it also may not create the timeframes you need when it comes to your manager and your appointed officials to be able to make that decision first thing in January. You might be in the midst of a search or something else, right? Yeah, so I highlight that language. There hasn't been a suggestion to revise it, because it's really sort of in the discretion of the governing body what they want to see in that first meeting. And it's hard for us to tell you what you want to see in the first meeting. But I'll leave that highlighted to think about. The next edit is in B regarding meetings. The old language inadvertently could lead to violations of the Open Meeting Act. When it says special meetings may be held on the call of the mayor or of 3 or more counselors. Well, if 3 counselors call each other to say, hey, let's have a special meeting, that's actually a violation of the Open Meetings Act. It could be a rolling quorum or an outright quorum. And so we've changed that to special meetings may be held on the call of the mayor or of the number of counselors equal to 1 less than a quorum of the members of the governing body, meaning 2. The reason we don't say 2 is because the number could change from 4 counselors to 8 counselors. So then if we just put a set number, we could get ourselves into trouble in different ways. That's that edit. We go down to D, roll call votes, which is, again, in your charter already. It talks about when roll call votes are used. Well, we added the language that is guidance from the Attorney General's office post-COVID, when we were all online, that if a governing body member is attending remotely, all votes during such remote attendance shall be made by roll call, and the votes of each member shall be recorded in the minutes. That is the recommendation of the AG's office, and that's what you follow if you have a remote attendee. So that change was there. Voting. Section E, I flagged this last year in my presentation to the governing body when I was doing effective governance.